to DT Fae Podcast. I'm Kate.
And I'm Elle.
Before we pick up with Team Caves and Team Archives on Avallen. I always want to say
I know.
but on Avallen.
Because you think of it like from like Game of Thrones, like the Avallen
Yeah,
Islands.
Exactly. And we have to share a book rec. Yes. But first we should talk about our April Fool's joke that kind of went viral, or as viral as we're probably ever going to go.
It's really impressive, actually.
I think so.
We're basically famous now.
Well, I had no idea because we had, 40 followers on TikTok when I posted it. So I did not think anybody was going to see it. I was fine with that.
It really took off. So for those of you who didn't see the video, we said the cover of the next ACOTAR book had been leaked, and it revealed who the focus of the next book was going to be.
Looking back, I wish I'd put more effort into it, especially the cover, which was just like Canva free tier.
But if you had it, it's supposed to be a joke. So if you make it too realistic, then people are really confused.
Yeah, and the other we'll talk about, there was another kind of like viral ACOTAR prank that their cover looked really good, and I was like, oh shit, ours is embarrassing, but it still fooled people somehow. And I think it was, when they got to the cover, that is actually when they realized.
Yeah, but
there's no way Sarah would put this out.
It's supposed to be funny. So that was the whole point.
And the title. A court of Fiddles and Pollen. But when I tell you people fell for it, they actually fell for it.
They did. It's gotten like 800,000 views on TikTok, and a lot of them are people that didn't finish the video. So
that's my favorite.
They didn't even wait to see the fake cover. They're like, "Oh my god, Tamlin!" and sent it to all their friends and threw their phones against the wall.
Well, it helped that Sarah had just done that spring Instagram post, so we could be like, it was actually a hit, and maybe it was. Maybe the joke is on us, and it's going to be Tamlin. And
we're too smart for our own good. Who knows?
Maybe. But my favorite, it was the blind reactions.
Yes.
Where we watched them go through every stage of grief. Because one of the creators posted it and was like, do a blind reaction, but they didn't say what it was or anything. So people opened it, didn't even know it was about ACOTAR, had no idea it was a joke, and they really fell for it.
There's a lot of funny comments too.
Yeah.
You can tell they're like, I really had a moment. I threw my phone against the wall. I Googled it. I was very concerned. I sent it to all my friends.
Yeah, that was my favorite part, was that people, because I do that too. I don't always finish things before I send it around.
Yeah, if we're all reading it and we're all waiting.
Yeah, so people were watching it halfway through, where we haven't shown the ridiculous cover or said the title, and we've only said that it's about Tamlin, and they're sending it to everyone they know.
There's actually a surprising number of people that would be happy for a Tower of Dawn read with Tamlin redemption story.
Yeah, there were a lot of people who were like, I would read this, and I would too.
I'm going to have to
read it. It could be ACA anything, and I'm going to read it. And I don't know. I'm torn on if Tamlin, he did actually kind of already have a redemption. I don't know if he he helped.
Kind of a redemption, but his court is still just in total disarray.
Yeah, because Feyre destabilized an entire court to get back at her ex.
Which is really we don't have to go down the full spiral, but that whole plot line is kind of wild, because what about all the innocent people you just did that
to?
And
she claimed, those are the people she claimed to really care about.
Yeah, you didn't protect
during
me
the tithe, and then that happened. So I don't know.
Yeah.
There was the one I was talking about earlier, the other video that went viral that was April Fool's. It was called A Court of Bloom and Decay, which is actually a very good title.
Yeah.
And it also convinced people that Sarah was writing a Tamlin book. It's kind of crazy that
I
don't even know where that originated. I saw it on Reddit, that we had the same idea. Yeah. Their graphic was way better. It looked like a legitimate book.
Which means that people are going to have a hard time trying to discern the truth.
Yeah, exactly. Ours was pretty fucking obvious.
But ours is funny and kind of on the nose. Bloom and Shadow would be a good title.
I know. And I was thinking also, if it were ACOTAR, House of Flame and Shadow, it could be about Az and Eris.
Okay.
Because I started thinking about other fake titles, and I was like, well, Flame and Shadow actually could be. It could be Az and,
It's kind of vague enough to cover multiple characters we have.
And then we have to talk about Sarah's Instagram post. I think it was last week. She's standing it feels like it's been a month, because I've been thinking about it so much, and I've read and watched so many theories. But she's standing in snow. She's looking away from the camera. And the caption says, went up north to write for a while, capital N, with the hashtag ACA what? And it sent me into an ACA spiral. because I immediately started, and everyone else, we started breaking it down. We're like, okay, how much can we read into this?
Well, I'm sure she's probably just like taking a retreat to a cabin or somewhere to write. But since we discussed that she doesn't post that often, it
Exactly.
feels like it's important.
Well, and I hope if she went to a cabin, no one just broke in and painted a bunch of eyes. That's still so
That's so
funny to
creepy.
me when you try to go on vacation and it just think about in a room it's covered in eyes.
Just the eyes.
Just the eyes.
That's wild. But it does have everybody guessing this could be something winter court.
Well, yeah, like there's so many different things that Snow could be referencing, and it could be referencing nothing, but it could maybe more goes to see her BFF Viv and she has like a meet cute, or she falls in love somewhere along the way, or it's snowy in Windhaven and you know who lives there.
Emery.
Exactly. But also Rowan has the pine and snow scent.
Yeah. Cassian's got snow and embers.
And Nesta has winter sunrise, and I'm not sure what that smells like or what half of these things. Every time they talk about someone's scent and also their taste, I'm like, what is
like as being night chilled mist?
What is that? Like, is that some sort of a reference to? Is that a thin place? Like, is as a thin place with the mist?
Wow.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, could that be a clue to him being, I don't know, a world walker or?
Oh my God, that would be huge.
Yeah, or does he just smell like the inside of a steam room or like vapor rub?
You would be famous for finding that Easter egg.
Can you imagine? True. I would, but also if I had a fae mate, they would probably describe me as like dry shampoo, my scent, dry shampoo, and like a washing machine that's never properly been cleaned.
I don't need somebody that can smell that well.
No,
too much. It is important. It is interesting that her.
It could be important.
Well, it is kind of. I don't know if it's important. In Sarah's caption, the N in North is capitalized.
Yeah, and so it's about the Lord of the North. He finally gets his meet cute. He has his own little love story, maybe.
I mean, like anything to take it back to Throne of Glass would make me happy.
I know, but also I do think technically you're supposed to capitalize like cardinal directions. So maybe she meant north or like northwest. I don't know.
Oh, don't make it so obvious. Okay.
So there was a lot going on social media. A lot to talk about. But we also have a book rec that comes from one of my best friends, literally for my entire life since elementary school. And she chose Manacled, and it's an almost 900-page alternate ending to Harry Potter. So it is fan fiction on steroids.
That's exciting, though.
Mm-hmm.
It might have actually started as fan fiction on Archive of Our Own, but now it's been turned into a published book by SenLinYu with 16 million downloads and 71,000 ratings on Goodreads.
That's why when people make fun of Archive of Our Own, I'm like, there are legitimately good stories on here.
Yeah, well, it's going to take a lot of them have taken off.
Well, especially because it's like some of these authors, especially Sarah, she can't go into like the gutters with us, like of our minds. So, but we're all thinking it. So people will like finish those thoughts that we've all had. So like anything you think of, any coupling you can find on there.
I wonder if the authors read that and they're like, hadn't considered it, but I see what you're saying.
I do wonder that. I don't feel like Sarah does because she doesn't seem as chronically online as like us.
Yeah.
But I would. And well, we've talked about how some of our theories would have been great if they'd made it into House of Flame and Shadow. So Sarah, hit us up if you need some ideas.
We're so ready to discuss.
This is what Jess had to say. Manacled is an alternate universe Harry Potter fan fiction divided into 3 parts. The story is imagined as what would happen if Harry Potter were to die, which I love that. He was my least favorite character. I know.
What's wrong with you? Okay.
But it's an interesting concept.
Okay.
So those who are left behind after Harry dies, it's kind of like a Handmaid's Tale type society, and it is ran by Voldemort and his Death Eaters. The main focus is on Hermione and her relationship with Draco. Part 1 finds Hermione as a coveted handmaid to the High Reeve, who turns out to be Draco, and is tasked to try to extract memories that Hermione is repressing. Part 2 is a flashback showing the events that led to the death of Harry Potter and Hermione's subsequent imprisonment. Part 3 is the continuation of the events from Part 1. And she said, "This was my first Harry Potter fanfiction. What appealed to me is the reimagined world in which Harry doesn't survive, but I also wanted to see how Hermione and Draco's relationship came to be, and it didn't disappoint. Part 1 gives some shocking and heartbreaking deaths. However, to me, it was a little slower because it was repetitive. Again, it did start on Archive of Our Own with the interactions between Hermione and the High Reeve. But I do believe it was a necessary build-up and set the stage for the flashback in Part 3. Part 2 was her favorite because of the dynamics of the friendships among Hermione, Harry, and Ron. I don't know what Ron thinks. Plus the relationship between Hermione and Draco.
Ron got dumped.
I guess so. She doesn't say what happened with her and Ron, but we see Hermione becoming more and more separated from Harry and Ron because of their thoughts towards the war and tactics Harry and the Order should use. Harry and Ron don't agree with Hermione, I guess. During her widening loneliness, the reader sees her enemies to lovers relationship play out with Draco, and we see a different side to him separate from his canon personality. She said that part 2 and 3 really stressed her out because the characters are trying to work to take down Voldemort, and Hermione and Draco ultimately decide to make a daring escape from Voldemort's reign. I loved it, but it really is gutting to see Hermione's story, particularly the flashback, so I'm guessing there's a lot of trauma. This story is dark and twisted, and there are several trigger warnings that you should read before diving in that include physical abuse, and rape and gruesome killings.
Holy crap.
I know. That's quite the trigger
not
list.
Harry Potter.
She gave it a spice level of 3.5 to 4 out of 5, so very spicy. And it's something I remember when it was on Archive of Our Own, and I read some of it, but I haven't read it since it's been turned into like a full-blown book.
I think I would be interested to read this, but having grown up such an intense Harry Potter fan, I don't know if I can read it because it goes against everything I know, and I think it might break my heart.
I'm sure that it has a few moments that would be hard to read about Harry's death, but
if I wasn't already so wrapped up in Harry Potter and it wasn't part of my childhood, I could probably be interested just to see how they spin it. But I don't know. I can't make any promises about reading it. It might scar me.
It's a lot, but if anyone out there ever has any books that you want us to recommend, or you just want to recommend to us, send me a message on Instagram at DTFA Podcast. And yeah, I mean, like she did, if just like write a little paragraph and we can read it. So yeah. I love reading people. Like I love all of the book recommendations we've gotten so far have been exactly the kind of shit that we fuck with, you know?
Oh yeah. And definitely if you give us a little explanation, that helps because it incentivizes me to read. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you read a blurb about a book, I'm like, okay, and this is like every other.
It can be so vague.
Well, because there's so many tropes that we see again that I'm like, okay, why would I read this one over that one? So when you guys give us a little more info, it's exciting.
Well, what are you reading right now? You started something.
I just started Blood Court.
Okay.
Actually, that's the book. I don't remember what the series is called. Hold the phone.
Well, I remember seeing it on the Kindle is kind of blowing up right now. There have been several new books that
people off the Kindle, and then
I know it was it was what I call library time every night.
Library time, are you awake?
I was like, oh, wake up! I can't get on the Kindle.
It's the Cursed Legacies series. The first book is called Blood Oath, and the author is Morgan Lee. I was really excited about this because it's a reverse harem, but there's only one book out. I do that a lot. I'm like, this is gonna be great, and I'm like, what do you mean the next one's not out?
Well, that's why. So my book recommendation I picked for next week is a series that I started. I read the first 2, and then I completely forgot to keep up with it.
Yeah, if you put too much time between it, and at this point I'm gonna forget it because I think the next book doesn't come out till June. But I did really like it. It reminded me a lot of the reverse harem, The Power of Five.
Is that our favorite? I think that might be my favorite reverse harem.
I think the Ruthless Boys of the Zodiac is my favorite.
Yeah.
But I did really, I've read Power of Five multiple times. But it's like they're not fae, but they have to form a quintet, and the world building,
like a singing group.
No, and it's a little more than that. They're like souls are bound, but whatever.
Oh, okay.
But the world building could have, like, it's not bad writing. There's just, I have so many more questions. Like she put it in, it's like maybe 275 to 300 pages. And I'm like, okay, like this is good enough, but like they kind of just breeze over and like throw some information at you and don't give you more. So it is good. And the spice is good. And it's interesting take on the main character because she doesn't like to be touched.
Okay.
So you're like, how are we going to get spicy if she's wearing gloves and baggy clothes?
Oh, like, okay. That makes me think of Anna Paquin's character in X-Men.
Yeah, like Rogue.
Yeah. But I guess she like actually couldn't touch people.
Yeah, she actually might kill them. No, this character, so far they said she hasn't had any kind of sexual assault, but I do think she grew up tortured. And I also don't know what kind of creature she is.
Okay.
They keep hinting at things, and I tried to Google it, and I was like, I have no idea what this is.
Well, when it's a series like that, there's not a lot of links out there.
Well, there's only one book out, so like nobody else knows either. I tried to Google it, and Reddit was like,
no. We have no idea what you're talking about. You sound insane.
You sound like a crazy person.
Well, keep us updated.
I will get back to you in June. So we're back on Avallen following the surprise wedding of Tharion and Sathia in the throne room. Before they split into Team Caves and Team Archives tomorrow, everyone, including Sathia, is visiting the archives today to look for any mention of the sword and knife, Mists, Peleus, Helena, First Wars, literally anything relevant.
And it's going to take a while considering there are no computers, so there's no digital catalog, and also no one can really go into these archives. So I just feel like nothing is mentioned.
How do we find this stuff?
I don't know. Well, I mean, we would be able to do it because we're like the last generation that was taught the Dewey Decimal System. Yeah. That and like the Oregon Trail. That was our education with computers.
Our claims to fame.
After being caught up on the Asteri being intergalactic parasites, the literal parasite in the water, Thea, everything else. Did we decide on Sathia? Sathia asks what Bryce's plan is to unite the Fae now that she has the Star Sword and Truth Teller, which is a fair question.
Yeah, sorry. I keep saying Sathia.
It feels like Sathia to me.
That's fine.
You live your truth. I'll live mine. Even when
I know the correct pronunciation, according to like Sarah, whoever else, I'll say it wrong.
Well, there's a disconnect in my head. Like I can say it correctly in my head, and then I can't control what comes out of my mouth.
I still say Vanir wrong half the time.
You do.
But I have finally landed on Myr. You're welcome. It took a long time.
Mare.
It's close enough, okay? Bryce tells her the Fae don't deserve to be united.
And like we've talked about a million times, Bryce's mistrust of the Fae is understandable, especially after what happened in the spring when the city was under attack and the Fae locked everyone out. But they've never actually had decent leaders, because if you go all the way back to Peleus and then through today with the Autumn King and Morven, I don't think there was anybody great between. I don't think they've ever had anybody to lead them.
I mean, it's that, but also the Asteri have been there the whole time.
Yeah.
So even if they had somebody decent, like the Asteri have squashed that. So you can't necessarily hold it against the whole race.
Yeah.
Based on the situation they were in. Bryce should know more than anyone that you can't judge someone based on their heritage.
Right. Like if anyone should be understanding of, you can't be judged based on like where you come from or who you come from, it should be Bryce.
Should be.
And she's surrounded by examples of like what you can miss out on when you make assumptions, like of Cormac, who grew up on the most depressing island ever with an asshole father, and he still became a rebel. Same for Ruhn. He wasn't as good at being a rebel. But they both turned out to be decent. You could say the same for Flynn. I think Dec actually has decent parents. But there's all these examples of people who are much more than where they came from, you know?
Well, even if she only knows a small amount of the Fae because she hasn't been around them, then you know
exactly.
The image they put out to everybody. You don't know what's going on behind closed doors.
Mm-hmm.
And the Fae seem very like image is important.
Yeah, so, you know, like 10 Fae, maybe. Like think about everyone who's just every night watching their little Fae Tonight Show or whatever.
Like Ruhn's mom, who like is desperate to be important because she's usually like literally used for breeding, and that's it.
I wanted there to be more too, and more like a story involving Lauren. I really wanted her to be a connection back to either Prythian or something, because I thought that it would come into play that Ruhn looks so similar to Rhys, and it would be through his mother. Well, but that doesn't seem to have.
I know. We aren't done yet. Maybe there's just too many big things that Sarah has to discuss.
I guess. But for them to be doppelgangers is still, I'm way off topic, but.
I know.
Anyway,
it's another one of those like Roman Empire for me. I'm like, but why?
Why?
Explain. Dec finds an old map of Avallen from the First Wars with dozens of islands surrounding it.
So 15,000 years ago, there were islands, and on a map from 100 years after the First Wars, they're gone.
That's
not
wild.
Hidden by the mist, but completely gone.
That's so wild. How does that happen? It reminds Bryce of something Celine said during her hologram lore dump. The island that had once been Thea's court shriveled and became barren. That's Crazy, especially when she began to house the Daglin's pets there to hide the harp's presence.
So, what was or is on this island, or being hidden on the island, that's just making other islands just disappear? I started to type the word for that where there's like little islands and it starts with an A, and I was like, I'll never be able to say that.
Is it talking about archipelago?
Yes. I just didn't put it in there because I was like, I don't want to have to stutter my way through.
God, listening to me last week when I couldn't think of like basic words, I was like,
oh, you could. We thought of what you were trying to think of. It's riddle.
yeah, I was like, I was thinking about riddles.
I said haiku.
Well, I mean, anyway, tangent.
Yeah, we talk about like Feyre being illiterate and not being able to solve the riddle. Meanwhile, we can't even think of the word riddle.
There's a lot going on in my mind. Okay, I'm elsewhere. Sorry. Oh well, we got there eventually. Well, we're talking about making the islands.
The islands.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the islands. Bryce also finds evidence that Pegasus did survive, at least for a few generations following Thea's death. But, like the islands, they're either somehow hidden or they were hunted to extinction, which is really sad. Why would you kill them?
Well, I still don't totally understand. We're not there yet. There's more to with the Pegasi? Pegasus,
probably. They have a few days to figure it out before either Morven tells the Asteri they're on the island or the Mystics pinpoint their location. Which, can they do that if they're behind the mist?
I don't know. And I don't think anyone knows. I think it's just like a overall...
Actually, wait. I think that's explained later. It's been a while. Yeah, sorry. Please continue.
They just don't know. They're like, we don't know if they would be able to. But during a quiet dinner, thanks to everyone on the island avoiding them, Baxian asked Lidia when she turned spy, and she asked when he began believing in the cause.
The answer to both questions is love. Baxian when he met his mate Danica 4 years ago, and Lidia when she gave birth to her sons.
So, through love, all is possible. They're shown to their rooms. Tharion and Sathia awkwardly walk towards the honeymoon suite, and they're all both kind of like,
there's not any like hint if either is attracted to the other, but they should probably just have sex.
Well, just have sex. You're married.
There's no reason not to.
I started thinking about, is it Game of Thrones where they make like someone has to watch? And I think that was actually like a practice a long time ago.
It was. They definitely did that to like kings and queens. And,
imagine having that job. I mean, first of all, those people were not like, if it's the Habsburgs, I don't want to watch.
I can't remember if that's in Game of Thrones. It's definitely
because I think that it is Sansa and
Tyrion.
Tyrion. Yeah, do you remember that?
Yeah, vaguely. I haven't watched that in so long.
But like, what a job! I would want that job for attractive people, I guess. If like, I don't want to watch.
Maybe
the tutors,
people are also not underage. I don't know. There's so many things.
Yeah.
Everything about that's so sketchy.
You're right.
Once in their room, Bryce opens up to Hunt about her fears, like not finding anything useful in the fight against the Asteri and making Ember and Randall targets.
I am very surprised that Ember and Randall weren't taken much earlier. Because they were holding Ruhn and Hunt in the dungeons to use for when Bryce came back. But they didn't, it doesn't seem like they made any sort of effort to go capture her parents.
Very weird.
And her brother that popped out of nowhere.
That hopefully they don't know about.
They finally get around to that talk they've been avoiding, sort of. Hunt isn't sure he can do this again, make choices that cost people their lives, which, understandable. Bryce tells him that's the old Umbra Mortis talking, and Hunt is like, maybe we need that Umbra Mortis right now.
No, because then you hide all your feelings.
And you look silly in your little helmet.
Also, ick. I need Hunt, my mate, Bryce says.
And think she means biblically, or whatever the biblically version in this.
This is such a weird, it's a bit of a weird turn of events, because if I'm pissed off, we're not having sex, I'm mad.
Yeah. No, I can't get over it.
We don't have to talk about it right now. Let's jump in.
Well, they just keep pushing it off, and it's going to explode pretty soon.
Regrets. They might not talk through all their issues or resolve any of them, but they do finally have sex.
And it's not just sex. Their magic and souls collide. I don't know what that means.
I have so many more questions, and we're going to get into some of this, but I still don't think I really understand what's going on.
They're just combined. I don't know.
But it's not just symbolically.
More than fluids are exchanged, I guess.
Somehow, Bryce having sex with Hunt, that power that's flowing between them has made Hunt made.
Like made, as in the Akatar definition of made.
Like Big M made.
Do you remember that show on MTV Made?
Yeah,
I loved that show. I wish that there was a channel that played old like MTV, because I mean, honestly, it was pretty fucked up, that show, if you go back and look at like the model and everything.
There's so many. I mean, there's several shows, like even Punked or like the
Yeah.
old like Real World Road Rules challenges. I would watch some of those. The old
I
ones.
loved, like, yeah, I don't watch the challenge anymore because I only recognize like 3
It's
people.
also the same people after like 20 years. I'm like, that's a lot.
I know.
The whole maid thing is confusing for us, but even more confusing for Hunt, who doesn't know what the mask and the trove are.
I know. He's like, Maid, the TV show?
But also, like, just as we go through this with being made, like, what does that change for him?
I
Like,
know.
I feel like I'm still unclear what's new.
Well, they don't even know the implications if it's permanent, because remember, he starts glowing, I think maybe in Sky and Breath too after they have sex.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this means that Hunt can use other made objects.
Well, we did discuss though that he and Bryce are both vessels.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't necessarily last, but they can use each other's power temporarily, maybe.
Well, it's one of those moments like Bryce, Ruhn, everyone else being able to put their mental shields up just like that with no training, versus Feyre having to learn to shield over the course of multiple books. And then Nesta struggling to use the mask versus what we see in this book later on with the mask. Because I started thinking, I was like, okay, does this mean Cassian is made? Are Tamlin and Rhys made just because you've had sex with someone who's made?
Something about him being a vessel has to be part of it, because he takes in the power much differently.
Yeah, but that's a bond we've seen before in Throne of Glass, exchange of power and fluids.
Stop saying fluids.
I know, sorry.
No, you're not. But I do have a lot of questions. It's just, there's too many things that aren't explained, and I have a lot more questions.
Yeah, to me, it does sound like, is it Caranom bond? It allowed Faye, if you haven't read Throne of Glass, it allows Faye to share their magic. Plus, with them, it would be the mate bond too, I guess. But that one, both of these seem a little manufactured when we learn more about Hunt later. So I don't know.
I feel like we also got a lot more information and like discussion on like maid or mates or whatever in other books. And
yeah, exactly.
Maybe because she's already discussed it, she's not telling us as much.
Well, do you think the parasite in the water has something to do with mate? Like they're not being mate bonds? Because we don't hear about any other mates besides Baxian and Danica. And then, 2 people later, it hasn't been revealed yet, and Bryce and Hunt.
Maybe it has to do with the fact that their powers are waning overall, that like they just aren't powerful enough for the connection for a lot of the population. I don't know. Well, because our mates only with Faye. Can everybody be mated?
Well, it's like Baxian is part angel. What is he? Angel and Hellhound?
Is he part shifter? Is
I guess.
Hellhound? But I mean, because like technically, why am I drawing a blank on her name? Danica. Don't want to. Because like they're all descendants of what were Fae before. So I could see her still having the ability.
Yeah.
Maybe that play, but I mean, I don't know. I have so many questions. I'm not giving us any answers.
Well, I do wonder if, I won't say if it happens, but if everyone were to be cured of the parasite, would mate bonds start snapping into place? Like, are there mates out there and they don't know it?
I would imagine we could see more of it because their powers are going to be dramatically different and there's so much more. It
does just make you kind of question Bryce and Hunt, like compared to the other mates, it just feels a little manufactured. Like, I also started thinking about like, they're lucky. All their mates are always beautiful. Like, imagine you get an ugly mate and then you just have to.
I mean, but like almost everybody that's Vanier sounds like they're beautiful. So
well, they're all gorgeous. Like, we haven't met anyone. I mean, the Harpy, R.I.P. for now. That's just straight up Uggo. Even Lucian has his, mad eye, moony eye, but he's still gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's because he's Fae. Maybe you just have. Well, nope. I'm going to spiral about Fae and angels and who's pretty. I don't even know.
They're all pretty.
Tharion and Sathia have found themselves in the classic one-bed trope.
Which is one of our favorites and something that Sarah's done in other books. But I think this is our first Crescent City one bed.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Because everybody's in present day and they can just rent a room somewhere.
Right. You can call down to the front desk if you're like at a Marriott and be like, I asked for a room with 2 beds.
Like, come on.
Can we get a rollaway?
Unfortunately, it's not like Feyre and Rhys at the end.
That is still one of my favorite scenes from any of these books is because it's not as graphic or intense as some of the other spicy scenes, but the build up to Feyre and Rhys in the inn.
But it still is very sexy.
It's
not
very
just like
sexy.
in your face sex.
Well, you can
it's so much
feel
more.
like just how into it they both are. She's still fighting it, of course, but you can.
Please.
I would give it up for everybody.
There's no fight here. You can stay in my room.
Yeah, really.
Tharion starts to introduce himself. Literally, I'm Tharion Ketos, former captain of intelligence for the River Queen.
If your job title starts with former, that's kind of an ick, but also you're captain whatever. Don't lie.
So great to know. Thank you.
And she's very aware who Tharion is. She's aware of who Tharion was. But surprise, he's also wanted by 2 queens. What she doesn't know is why he stepped up. So he explains it's basically his redemption arc. To know that he did something good for someone else.
Poor Lidia. Lidia not invited to the send-off.
She's staying like they're all out there like hugging, and she's like, "What? How did they even know? How?
I mean,
was there an invitation?"
Go, but it feels weird.
Yeah.
She's not invited to the send-off, so she's standing on her balcony as Bryce, Hunt, and Baxian prepare to leave for the Cave of Princes the next morning.
The only one that really waves is Bryce. Like, I think Baxian looks back at her, but Bryce does like a very big wave, and it made me think of Forrest Gump wave.
I don't know. I don't think I really understand Bryce's character well enough.
Bryce has I don't know. That it's like a very interesting character because she is so understanding and she has so much empathy for Lidia, but then she doesn't extend that to Hunt always.
Yeah. Morven, the air quote stag king, steps up beside Lidia basically just to insult her.
The stag king who isn't a stag, so I would think that's a huge insult to deer shifters.
Yeah.
Like, why would you go by the
why
stag
do you
king?
have this title? Yeah.
I don't know. I had a moment of wondering, like when we first learned that he's the stag king, I was like, is Morven Lydia's father? But I was wrong, of course. Because we do find out about, I'm wrong about a lot. I add it to the list.
Yeah.
We learn about her family later, so that it's not a possibility. So I guess that he's just the stag king. Is that like a title that you inherit when you become king? Like, why would you declare yourself stag king if you're not a stag?
I may have discussed this in the last episode, but the throne that he seems to be sitting on, made of stag horns, reminds me a lot of Throne of Glass and their like demolished throne in Terracin. But also, I wonder if it has to just do with the beasts that were on the island. Kind of like, there's
maybe
Pegasus disappeared, but I feel like they had really abnormally large stag that were there.
Well, when they first see the throne, there is a moment where I can't remember if it's Hunt or someone is like that size of a stag doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. So was it hunted to extinction or is it like from another world?
I don't know. I think whatever it is, it definitely has to do with something unique to their island. Nothing about this guy personally. Bryce, Ruhn, Hunt, Tharion, and Sathia, who refuse to be left behind with those mind-reading murder twins.
I wouldn't want to be left behind either.
No. They reach the underwhelming entrance to the Cave of Princes, which is little more than a sliver between 2 boulders with ancient runes etched into the stone.
And that has to be word marks. Like, every time ancient runes are mentioned, what else would it be?
I assume word marks. Yeah.
But the person who, and I won't say, we're not there yet, so I won't say who created this cave. Not created, who decided to use this cave. But that person shouldn't know about word marks based on where they're from, right? I don't know, unless it's also in the Book of Breathing, so then maybe.
Well, they all seem to have their own version of word marks, or like what they call them or use them for. Bryce and her pink sneakers once again lead a hot girl cave walk using her starlight as a guide.
And it couldn't be worse than, my mate, the Midgard worm, right?
That was so funny.
Yeah, we did this. It was like a TikTok filter where you press record and it does like all the different. Yeah, it goes through all the mates, and you got Cassian, right? And then I got the Midgard worm. Perfect.
Very telling.
And it was like a picture of my ex, basically. According to Dec, Peleus' tomb and the Star Sword's resting place lie in the center of the cave network, so they have a general direction, but they'll also need to dodge ghouls and wraiths and scary shit while navigating the mist.
That sounds easy.
Ghouls makes me think of It's Always Sunny, because it's a really early episode where Charlie is doing online dating and they're filling it out for him, and they ask him for like, I can't remember if it's his interest or something, and he's like, ghouls. And they're like, what do you mean ghouls? And he's like, ghouls.
That's very specific.
I know. It's really funny.
Morven.
Morven.
We'll get there. Morven corners Ruhn on his way to the archives and asks questions about Bryce that show his hand.
Because Morven is scared that Bryce is there to claim Avallen for herself. He doesn't know how much she doesn't give a shit about the Fae.
Yeah, no. And he seems concerned about the Autumn King, which should be a big red flag. Like maybe they're closer than we realized.
Morven spent all night praying to Luna, and it's led him to believe that Ruhn is the Fae's only hope.
That's interesting.
But Ruhn isn't interested, and also Morven's been shitty about Ruhn this whole time, and now all of a sudden he's like, actually, you're our one hope.
Is it just because you're not a girl?
Okay. He's also not intimidated by Ruhn. Like, he's intimidated by Bryce.
Yeah.
Dec asks Lidia if Morven will tell the Asteri they're there, but Lidia says that Bryce handled him well.
You could learn a thing or two from your sister, Lidia tells Ruhn, adding, you're a prince, start acting like one.
She's not wrong. Ruhn has been running from his title and responsibilities his entire life, and it's understandable knowing his history with his father, but I also think Lidia is just in a bad mood, which is also understandable.
I mean, she hasn't quite forgiven him yet. I would probably be pretty snarky to him too.
Well, yeah, he's like turning a corner for him, but people don't forget. I would remember how you treated me.
I'm still waiting for those apologies.
Mm-hmm.
And it sticks with Ruhn all day while they're searching the archives for anything about the missing islands, Star Sword, the dagger, or the mists.
And so Ruhn is all broody, probably just stomping around and being emo.
Throwing
Dec
books.
can't even get in touch with his family or Mark, because there's no cell service. But Ruhn's like stomping around. I'd be like, can you shut up?
It's so dramatic.
And Bryce, Hunt, Baxian, and the newlyweds, Jessica and Nick, are walking around. And oops,
Speaking
Bryce
of
tells everyone.
MTV.
Yeah, really. Remember the chicken of the sea?
Yes.
But oops, Bryce tells everyone about the mask that she promised Nesta and Az that she would keep a secret.
She's really good at that.
Mm-hmm.
Hunt doesn't complain about the secret his mate kept from him until now because he still hasn't told her about the lightning Rigel has took from him and what it might be used for.
And that's a big deal. The harpy being potentially resurrected is something Bryce should probably know about. And it's most importantly, one of the very few things that I got right on my bingo card because I had that the harpy was coming back. Bryce notices a carving in the wall of the cave, an 8-pointed star, of course, marking the beginning of a walkway with carvings on both sides, showing Fae holding what seems to be ropes of stars.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And those ropes are looped around the necks of flying horses.
So again, she's assuming that the Fae killed all of Thea's Pegasus, which why would you even do that? Like, wouldn't they be great for battle? I don't know. Maybe once Thea was gone, they wouldn't listen to anyone else.
I guess it depends if they're how sentient they are, like how aware of the transfer of ownership or something.
Yeah, I don't know.
It definitely doesn't help that her perception of the Fae, Bryce's starlight, is useful both as. Oh, sorry, I misread that. It definitely doesn't help with Bryce's perception of the Fae.
Yeah, now
her killed all the Pegasus.
All Jelly Jubilee's getting murdered, and she's like, "I fucking knew it. The Fae suck."
Of course they would. Bryce's starlight is useful both as a guide and a deterrent for the ghouls. One of whom gouges a line into the sand before slinking back into the shadows.
It's also very Scooby-Doo, just ghouls,
I just feel like that's an insult. Like, what are you ghouls doing? I don't know. It's hard to take seriously.
Bryce runs a hand over the lines and rubs dust and debris between her fingers, and then she licks it. Well, the wheels in her mind are clearly turning, but it's Bryce, so she doesn't actually share what she's figured out, but she's clearly figured something out.
Tell me. Concurrently, the murder twins are watching Team Archives, specifically Lidia.
Like everyone else, Lidia is, without explanation, proficient at mental shielding. And it's more believable with her than the rest of them because you can't tell me that Tharion and Ruhn were just like, mental shield. Like they just had that ability.
They're just like too goofy and they're never paying attention to what's going on around
exactly.
them. So I just don't trust that they can do that.
Well, and Ruhn specifically is very distracted for a lot of this book. And
Lydia's been living life on the edge. So
she's more believable
all the time.
And she throws up a wall of fire, but it's not just fire, Ruhn notes. It's a whirling storm of flame generating its own wind and weather, which is a combo of Aelin's fire and Rowan's wind magic.
That is a huge hint.
It's a huge hint, but again, it doesn't make fucking sense with the timeline.
We're not mad. We just have questions.
We're not mad. You know what? I'm not going to get... There's a point where we learn a little bit more about ley lines and time and space. So I'm going to have to move forward and let go and let God that the timeline it will make sense in the future.
We're just gonna have to accept that she's a descendant. We don't know how, and hopefully we get more information in one of the next few books.
But I think about it constantly.
Yeah. I mean, how could you not? She's like spelled out that they're related.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway.
But what do I know? But like we talk about in pretty much every episode, it doesn't even make sense with the timeline. I wish I could be a person that sees an Easter egg and is like, that's fun. But again, I spiral.
This is too much of an Easter egg to not have more information on, though. After Ruhn takes Lidia's words about being more princely to heart and doesn't take the murder twins bait, she asks him how he ended up himself with an asshole father.
He credits his friends, which keep in mind how important his friends are to him when he doesn't see or hear from them for literal days.
Yeah, upcoming. No questions
And
asked.
he does not, he asked Lidia about how it went with her sons before they left the ship.
Terrible. Thanks for asking. Like, actually, thanks for asking, which progress. But,
she's giving him a lot of grace.
Yeah.
I mean, she had like her little moment of like, start acting like a prince. But other than that, she's being nicer to him than I probably would be.
Maybe she's just hesitantly waiting to see where this is going.
Yeah.
Before snapping at him, which I could probably work on. Back in Lunathian, Ithan is preparing to leave the House of Flame and Shadow for Avallen thanks to transportation arranged by Jessica.
I love that Jessica is having to arrange things for her assistant. Like, she's still taking care of everything. Ithan and Hypaxia are going to the island to find Sofie the Thunderbird's body in an attempt to give Siggy the opportunity to undo the whole Reaper thing, which was, again, her decision. Let's not forget that when we, like, moving forward, she decided to become a Reaper.
Just leave her. But they have bigger issues right now. After feeling a shudder rumble through the black halls, Ithan and Hypaxia run to Jessica's office and they learn Omega boats pulled into the
Istros.
I'm having a day. They pulled into the Istros and fired brimstone missiles into Asphodel Meadows.
And like when the city was under attack last spring, Ithan races to help the most vulnerable of Lunathians, the humans, this time with Hypaxia at his side, which she's a lot more useful.
Yeah.
Bless him.
They attacked specifically the humans, which is awful.
Mm-hmm.
Bodies litter the cracked streets, some in shock and others still and silent. And closer to where the blast hit, it's nothing. No bodies, no cars, no buildings, just a giant crater.
So it's basically a nuclear bomb.
Yeah.
And I know a lot about that because I forced myself to watch Oppenheimer. And it was very long. Did you ever watch it?
No.
Yeah, the person I was watching it with in theater fell asleep, but yeah.
I just don't care.
Not my favorite.
Much.
On autopilot, Hypaxia pulls first light from her bag and runs to the nearest humans, and Ithan starts helping people who are stuck under debris.
And because the Asteri chose to strike in the morning, a lot of people were in the streets on the way to work and school.
I would have been, because I'm work from home, so I would have been looking out the window, like drinking my daily iced coffee treat, being like, oh no, y'all okay? Are y'all okay?
Are y'all okay? That sounds bad.
Baxian and Hunt fly team caves across a river as Bryce's mind races through the carvings they've seen, which don't tell the story Celine's carvings did. There's no slumbering evil beneath their feet, just a river of starlight and death and destruction. But, you know, Hunt and Baxian being able to fly and these caves being described like that they're so similar, does it solve the wingspan debate? Does this mean that Az has a bigger wingspan than Baxian and Hunt?
I mean, I think they're different caves, but like maybe.
Maybe. I think about wingspan a lot. I just think science has now proven that Az has the biggest wingspan.
Science.
So we'll be moving forward with that.
Okay, I'll allow it. Sathia, maybe we'll find out in the next book. Sathia takes the opportunity to call Bryce on her bullshit.
And, you know, someone needed to humble Bryce.
You don't want anything to do with the Fae, say they aren't your people, and then you have not 2 but 3 of the Fae's most sacred artifacts if we're counting the horn.
Bryce again uses her Fae locked innocence out when the city was attacked. Argument, but some of us had no choice, say the counters. Your plan, if you beat the Asteri and survive, is to walk away from the Fae instead of, you know, leading us or changing things for the better.
Maybe even if we did it on purpose, like, I don't know, like the whole point of leading is changing things.
Well, you can't tell me every Fae family. I mean, I know that they're like a lot of them are well off, like the upper, I guess, echelon of Fae. Yeah. But there's got to be other Fae out there that we're not even in a position to lock people out.
They
like
sound kind of chauvinistic too. The women don't sound like they have a lot of rights for themselves, and it sounds very much like if your father or your brother is like, "You're not doing this," then you're not doing it. Like, it sounds like Sathia was kind of like locked in her own home.
Like, what was she
it's not
supposed
like she
to
chose
do?
not to help children. It wasn't, I don't know. Bryce makes everything sound easy, but like, you live by yourself.
Exactly.
You weren't literally locked in your home. But anyway, that's a whole spiral. The Fae dug their own graves and they can lie in them. Ends the conversation.
That's harsh.
I mean, but like, you have again, you're saying all this based on like one situation, maybe two. What else? Where did all this come from?
Yeah.
Even Hunt seems a little disappointed in Bryce's attitude.
Alone in the archives, a very distracted Ruhn and Lidia continue to get to know each other IRL. He asked if she was ever going to meet him in the garden that night at the ball, and she had planned to, but the harpy got there first.
Poor Uggo harpy.
I know, like, everyone is always disappointed to see her. Like, I would be a villain, too, if I walked in a room and people were like, ugh.
Ruhn and Lidia get closer, both figuratively and literally, but before things can go too far, Lidia pulls away.
And there's no spice in the cave either. Hunt immediately falls asleep because his life is a nightmare and he's used to sleeping in less than ideal situations. Like, he just rolls over and is like, night. And Bryce can't go to sleep because, bitch isn't used to, like, I mean, yeah, the day in Prithian, she was sleeping in a cave. Other than that, she's had a pretty...
She's kind of a pampered princess.
She is kind of she's a little privileged.
And Hunt is like, I will sleep when I can.
I will thrive under any conditions.
I mean, at this point, he should. Bryce can't sleep, especially with her starlight shining in her eyes.
That would be very annoying.
Like, can I just turn this off for a minute? But I guess you have to keep the ghouls away. So she stares at
the ghouls.
The ghouls are like, in my mind, they're like in a little circle outside of her starlight.
I'm literally picturing like little ghosts, but like Casper type ghosts where they have the ghost tail out and they're just like looking from behind rocks.
That probably would be less terrifying than what they really are.
Yeah.
Bryce is staring up at the ceiling and its beautiful carvings that have only been seen by Fae assholes seeking the Star Sword.
And now her, a female half-breed. So Peleus is like in his sarcophagus with side eye, just what the fuck?
How'd she get in here?
If there was one person who could understand the complexity of her fucked up inheritance, of having the future of her people weighing on her, it would be Danica. But first of all, that lying bitch is dead. Respectfully. So that doesn't help. But there's a lot of differences in the way that Bryce and Danica kind of handled where they came from and what they were going to do.
I mean, Danica literally hates her mother and what the wolves have become, but she still stepped up.
Compared to Bryce,
she's not like
she really did.
Just lie in their beds. She saw what the wolves had become and sought a way to change things. It's what got her killed, but at least she tried.
Well, and maybe that's why Bryce is so stubborn. Like, if her whole, well, not her whole life, but for the last few years before Danica died, that was probably the person that called her on her bullshit. So maybe there's just no one to call her out. Like, that's why Sathia is probably an important character, because someone needs to humble her. You can't say, I know, but it's like she dismisses Hunt, but you can't say that the Fae should change and then in the next breath you don't want anything to do with them. So someone needs to call her out.
It's just very childish.
It is.
After a night of alternating between terror over Team Caves and popping boners over Lidia, Ruhn goes to the dining room for breakfast.
Dec and Flynn, who we know love waffles, they aren't there, but like, I'm sure they're fine.
Yeah.
I think it's maybe I read too much into it, but the fact that Sarah was like, they're not at breakfast, I was like, oh no, they love waffles.
So she made a point of pointing out how many times they were not seen. And I'm like, you guys didn't check in at all?
No.
And you're technically in enemy territory? Weird. A male approaches Lidia, but unlike everyone else, it's not hatred or disgust on his face. He's there to thank her for saving his life 10 years ago when she found his unit and warned them that the sexy hammer was coming.
I had to put that. It is.
So it's not crazy.
Physically.
So it's not just this male she saved that night. It was 7 who are alive and with their families thanks to her.
Of course it was 7. He tries to show Lidia a photo of his family, but she won't look up, and it's not in a TMZ yelling at celebrities trying to leave LAX sort of way, like not looking up. It's, I wish I'd been able to do more.
Yeah.
Is like the pain on her face.
Like, I mean, thank you for thanking me, but I didn't do enough.
Yeah. Even though the fact that she saved anyone under the conditions is amazing. And compared to other characters, I mean.
It's amazing how much she cares with everything she's had to go through.
Yeah.
More than Ruhn was doing unless beer pong saves lives.
Yeah, also. I mean, compared.
The men Lidia saved returned to Avallen and joined the rebellion with Cormac, but they never revealed to him or anyone who had saved them.
That's crazy
Which is
that
awesome.
yeah, it's amazing. But then, so this whole time when Cormac was talking about Agent Daybright, I mean, there was that connection there and he just never knew.
Yeah.
And when they heard about when Lidia blew up the spine, they started contacting each other again. So Lidia not only saved Hunt, Ruhn, and Baxian, and she blew up this major pipeline for the Asteri, but she inspired others and she gave people something that they desperately needed, which was hope. Just Lidia, once again, carrying this whole fucking
I know.
book.
Lidia saving our asses. Thank you. Lidia tells Ruhn she hopes that if her sons were ever in a similar situation, that someone would do the same for them.
I think that's a little foreshadowing, too.
Lydia and Ruhn resume their archive search until it's time for a coffee break, but there's no Starbeast on Avallen.
Still no Dec and Flynn. I'm sure they're fine. No Morven, no murder twins, but I'm sure it's unrelated.
I mean, sorry. Talked right over you with that one, but I'm just like, how many times he's just so distracted by Lydia?
He's so distracted.
Hasn't occurred to him at all. Speaking of Morven, Ruhn asks Lydia why the Asteri never investigated the mists, and she thinks Rigel has thought there was some charming Midgard quirk.
He was like, love that. Cute. It does seem like he would have been a little more interested after Cormac came out of the rebel closet, but we're going to learn why, because there actually is a reason. So I hope you're ready for the next episode.
Are you ready? I mean, it is kind of wild though. This is your planet now. You aren't like investigating everything you can.
He doesn't seem to give a shit about the magic that seemed to inherently be in Midgard. So
it's interesting.
Doesn't really fit with his character, but okay.
Lydia does not apologize for telling Ruhn to act more like a prince, but she does explain why. He wears his emotions on his face. He feels in a way Morven and the Autumn King don't, and she doesn't want that to be used against him.
The way it would have been used against her if she didn't have that hind mask.
Ruhn doesn't really have a mask, which is why we love him so much.
Yeah, like everyone else seems to has like Bryce puts on her arrogant, sassy mask,
and then puts on her like party girl.
Yeah, and then Hunt has his like helmet. But Ruhn doesn't really have a mask. He is who he is, and we love that, but it is something that could make him vulnerable.
It's not great with spy games.
Yeah.
They find a scroll titled The Roots of Earthen Magic, which explains Fae with earth magic like Flynn and Sathia were sent to scout lands for places to build, not just the best places geographically, but magically.
They could sense ley lines and told the Asteri to build their cities where several of the lines met at crossroads of power, but they selected Avallen specifically for the Fae, just the Fae, as their stronghold. Like the Mist, we'll learn more in the next episode, it seems to be another example of Erd kind of setting things up for a certain, I don't know, what you call fate, I guess.
Yeah. There's reasoning behind all of it.
There is.
It doesn't match with what Flynn and Sathia feel about the island, however, so what changed between then and now? And why haven't the mists changed too? What could they be hiding and where?
Right, like they talk about the islands like they had all this magic, all these ley lines, but now it feels rotten. So they're like, what? I mean, it's just like with the islands disappearing. They're just like, what happened between then and now?
Yeah, I think we briefly touched on it last episode, but just Flynn and Sathia, they can feel something off. Their magic doesn't like these islands, but also a bunch of the islands have disappeared. Why?
In the Archipelago? In the cave, Baxian stands in for his dead mate, and he pushes Bryce on her the Fae are lost cause bullshit. What about Ruhn? What about Dec and Flynn? Who I'm sure they're okay, by the way. And maybe because it's Danica's mate, she does admit that the Fae aren't all bad here or in Prythian.
Okay, so maybe you're being dramatic.
It's
like the wolves. Most of them didn't help during the attack on the city, but Ithan did. And Bryce doesn't know it, but he's helping right now. The right leader makes all the difference. It's what Danica believed, what she fought, and what she died for.
What she lied for, too, apparently, because Baxian says Danica put the horn on Bryce's back to, like, set her on this path because she somehow knew that this coked out party girl would be the one that would need to save the world. I mean that's that's
a lot of faith you put in her, especially if she never figured it out.
Right.
Okay, powwow over, because it's getting too tempting for the ghouls, even with the magical Starborn princess.
But there's something provoking the ghouls. We've said ghouls a lot. There's something provoking the ghouls. Two somethings who step out of the mist, dragging Dec and Flynn, who are in fact not fine.
Thank you, somebody checking on them. Morven and the Autumn King enter the chat. One wreathed in flame and the other in shadow.
Which maybe that's the real flame and shadow?
There's so many options. It's vague enough that it encompasses
Like,
multiple
I know
people's
that
magic.
well, it's like the names of the books, it's like we didn't learn or more about Earth and Blood in the first one and Sky and Breath in the second, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It could be Lidia and Ruhn too.
It could be Lidia and Ruhn. They're flame and shadow.
We
and
do. Oh, sorry.
well, I don't know. I don't know if like does House of Many Waters being next mean that we're actually going to learn more about the Myrrh, or it's just because it's the next house?
Yeah, or is it Tharion, or is there something else?
Well, maybe the real House of Flame and Shadow is the friends we made along the way.
Oh. So now we know what had the ghouls all hyped, this gruesome twosome.
Morven immediately checked on the Autumn King when he saw that Bryce had his notebook, and you love to see men supporting men. He was like, "Are you okay, friend?"
I'm really surprised to hear it because I feel like he would want to get rid of another power.
I know. He's like, I'm in fact not okay. Can someone let me out of this closet?"
Thank you for asking.
And Morven kind of has a point about Ruhn being so obsessed with Lidia that he missed his bros literally being kidnapped.
That's embarrassing.
It is.
I would feel awful if I was Ruhn. Now the bros are being used in an attempt to make Team Caves return to the castle. But Bryce is like, just kill him now, because that's not happening.
Flynn and Dec are both like, stay psych right now. But Bryce knows there's no way that they're going to kill these two studs before they're bred, which is disgusting, but also works in their favor because there's no way they would kill two Fae males that have like this potential, I guess.
Especially with their bloodlines.
Yeah.
But it's all about breeding in bloodlines with them.
Mm-hmm.
Morven LOLs at Bryce's mirror light up against his darkness, but the Autumn King, the brains of this operation, sees the concentrated seed of light at his daughter's fingers and recognizes her as a threat that she is.
So they start running, I'm assuming like cartoon characters where they're like running in place, and Bryce shoots a beam of light into the ceiling and causes a cave-in. Meanwhile, Ruhn is like, I have not seen Flynn or Dec in a while, my two best friends. Oh, well, Lidia, do you want to come in my room while I come in you?
Wow.
Basically, that is his train of thought, I have to imagine.
I would imagine, yes. He just wants to talk. They take a walk down Memory Bridge. Then the convo turns to Lydia's deal with the Ocean Queen and her sons.
Which, thank God, Pollux, you are not the father.
Gross.
He's been, because Ruhn has been kind of, he didn't want to, I don't think he wanted to ask, but he also was like, please God, don't let it be Pollux.
Yeah.
But Pollux isn't the father, he is daddy. Lidia finally shares the story of her pregnancy, which started during a fertility rite in the Aldosian forest. I tried to look that up and I could not find like a deeper meaning. She comes from a long line of powerful stag shifters. They have rituals, secret old rituals, honoring gods Lidia thinks predate Midgard.
It sounds very much like the same ritual for Tamlin.
Exactly.
Lidia and the male never knew each other's identities.
So it's basically a glory hole situation. So like you were saying, it sounds like Calamai. Is that how you say?
Oh yeah, Calamai.
Which is with Great Rite and Prythian, and it's because it actually is the same rite, and Tamlin is the father of Lydia's sons.
Please stop trying to make Tamlin happen.
I don't want a redemption arc. I just want Tamlin smut. I think I'm pretty simple. Pretty simple person.
Clearly.
Also, you can't be okay with an Adian redemption, how he treated Lysandra, and then not be at least open to Tamlin putting on his ripped pants and fixing up his busted manner. Right?
No. If we're going to spiral on this one, Tamlin overall is not a big thinker. He doesn't plan anything. He doesn't make anybody's life better. He just follows what he's told. Adian was not perfect with Lysandra, but he did a lot to undermine what was happening in Avallen and to try to save and protect his people, which Tamlin didn't do. Tamlin just continued to abuse his people the same as father did.
Wow.
Just want to know.
Hot take on Tamlin.
Probably going to have some hate comments after this episode.
I know.
Considering people on the TikTok liked him.
Yeah, the TikTok. Oh my God. You sound like you're 50 years old.
But the TikTok that we posted.
The TikTok.
Referencing,
okay, you're right.
Not like TikTok.
Okay. But like I said, I did try to find a deeper meaning or connection with the name of the forest, thinking that would be like a hint to if this is a connection back to Throne of Glass, which I have to imagine it is based on her, like who they imply that she's descended from.
Yeah.
But I really couldn't find anything. Was there anything like that in Throne of Glass, like a fertility ritual or anything?
I don't know, because I feel like that would have been the ancient Fae.
Yeah.
And by the time that Avallen is coming around, a lot of things have been stopped.
Right.
But still, with the stag, it feels like it's still relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Lydia's father, a power-hungry monster, took her when she was 3, and she was his little protege, training and scheming until she was recruited into Sandriel's Triari.
She'd been serving Sandriel for 10 years when she was chosen for the fertility ceremony. Lidia and Pollux had been dancing around each other, but nothing had really happened. So she participated in it, and a few weeks later, she was pregnant.
The baby from the ritual would have been celebrated, but for the first time in her life, Lidia hesitated.
Like Baxian and Hunt, and like Micah, if he had met me, Lidia was changed by love.
Obviously.
The selfless kind of love. A kind of love that you would do anything to protect. And so that's exactly what she does.
Well, and considering her father was a monster, she couldn't hand her babies over to him. So she staged a kidnapping, let everyone believe that Ophion had grabbed her, and ran until she found the Ocean Queen, who she knew had aided rebels in the past.
The Ocean Queen welcomes Lidia, but it's with a caveat. She can stay, she can have the babies there and stay for a little while. But in exchange for the Ocean Queen protecting her sons, Lidia has to go back, work her way up, and then feed info back to Ophion and the Queen from the Asteri.
She played the part of loyal servant, but tried to save people when she could, like the agent who thanked her in the dining hall. And like Sofie, or at least she tried with Sofie, hence the white stone she tossed into the water to alert the Ocean Queen.
And when she returned, like Amy and Gone Girl, Pollux and his heavy cock were there to catch her.
Whoa.
Just like when we allegedly saw Ben Affleck's penis in the movie, but then I didn't see it. Do you remember how we were like rewinding and then trying to pause?
See the side of it.
I don't think you could really see it. But do you remember though? Because I have like a core memory of us sitting in your living room, like rewinding and then trying to pause exactly at the right moment.
Just want to be sure I saw that. Lidia slept with and stayed with Pollux to complete her cover story.
Then Ruhn, the terrible spy on the Mind Bridge, came along and he saw who she really was under that cover, that hind mask. You know, until he actually did see who she was. And then he was shocked and horrified that an undercover Asteri agent worked with the Asteri.
I know. Really surprising there, Ruhn. He admits finding out who she was fucked with his head, but now he doesn't care who she is as long as she's his.
Her face crumples and his cock tightens and their teeth clack. And it's all happening until he grabs her wrist and pins them above her head.
Oh, she flinches and he immediately lets go, asking her to stay with him. Not for sex, just for naked skin-to-skin sleep.
That's interesting.
That's how that happens.
And at no point are they curious why they're getting this like bachelor style one-on-one date with no interruptions. Like they're in an empty castle.
They haven't seen anybody. They haven't seen anybody at dinner. They haven't seen his friends. They haven't checked on it. It's fine.
It's fine. I'm sure they're fine.
Meanwhile, the Autumn King and Morven are now cut off by the cave-in, but Teen Caves are still blocked by the river. So just like in Prythian, Bryce yeets herself into the water with no warning.
Hunt and Baxian are confused because not only could this group have taken the two kings like in a fight, they also could have flown across the river or they could have teleported. But Bryce opted to go downriver, so they're assuming there was a reason, but Hunt doesn't know that reason. It does piss him off. So he just kind of freezes in his like anger and confusion. He kind of freezes like Bryce. Like he's Bryce and the river is the Crystallis demon.
Baxian does his best share impression.
He's like, snap out of it. And they all jump into the river now.
We're doing it now.
And that's where we'll pick up next week with chapters 56 through 60.
Thanks, guys.